All right, salvete, y'all. This is Magister Hodges, and we are going to just talk a little bit about the Cucurbita Mythologica project and assignment. I've gotten a lot of questions specifically about the cultural analysis or classical reception piece. So just going to kind of walk through briefly the first part and talk a little in more depth about the last parts. Um, so the project is I've been doing this in my class for a few years now. These are the instructions my students see. One, a lot of people have asked me about this sign up. You don't have to worry about that since you're online. I should have made that more clear, and I apologize, or just not had this here. Apologize about that. You do not have to sign and choose your character. You can choose whoever you want. If we have some overlap, that's fine. So basically, for this, you guys are going to be choosing one of the characters from, I should have gone back, from this list, from the Classics Tober list. That's a little bit more obscure gods and goddesses and heroes and characters, just to dig a little deeper. So for Latin 2, you are going to provide a written explanation with a myth, summarizing the myth story or summarizing the character. For example, characters like Nemesis, they don't have a Nemesis doesn't have like one central story. She's more like a character, a minor character that appears in a lot of stories. So on that part, you can just kind of summarize like, the kinds of myths she shows up in. What do we know about her? How do we know about, where do we get that from? And just, a summary of the information that's out there about her. Also on that written explanation, you have to come up with a design that'll be put on a pumpkin to reflect your character. And in the explanation of the design part in the template, that's the bottom left. That is, just act like your audience doesn't know what they're looking at and explain. It might be painfully obvious, but just explain each detail of your design, why you chose what you chose, and how it signifies that character, whether it be some type of symbol or a scene or some depiction. Now, like I said, the part that I got a lot of questions about was the cultural analysis piece or the classical reception piece. So I just kind of want to get forward to that. Anyway, here's the written explanation. Nomen Romanum, Nomen Graecum, Roman name, Greek name. A lot of these characters, unlike the Olympian gods, they have the same name in Roman and Latin and Greek. One thing I've told students to do is to put it in like Latin font over here, Times New Roman, like the font, our characters that we use in English. And then over here, try and find the Greek name written in the Greek script and put it over here. It just looks kind of cool. Down here is where you give the summary of your character or a major story of theirs that you're basing this on. You put your character name right there. Bring in a picture, especially if you're basing the design of your pumpkin on a certain picture. Please include that picture here. If you're doing something more freestyle, then just a picture of the character as like the Romans would have seen them. Try to avoid the deviant art and fanfic website depictions because that might not be very accurate. And then down here is where you give the explanation of your design. Like I said, it might be obvious, but just act like your audience is, for lack of a kinder word, stupid, and that you need to explain every little bit to them, just so that the connection is clear. All right. So then that leads us to part 2. So you either do a cultural analysis or a classical reception. A cultural analysis, in short, is looking at the products, practices, and perspectives of an ancient culture based on the things that they made, did, and believed about that character and things related to them. Classical reception is where we study and analyze the portrayal of ancient characters, ancient stories in modern times. So, like movies, songs, poems, video games, any type of media that depicts characters, or even like company names. Like there's the jewelry company Pandora. That is classical reception. That is using the name of a character from Greek mythology in a modern context to help sell jewelry. So you kind of analyze why they're doing that. Let's look more in depth first. So you choose one of these two to do. If you have a character who was not a major character in Roman or Greek mythology, not something, if you look them up and there wasn't a lot of worship around them, there's still ways to go, but you might want to go more towards the classical reception piece, and vice versa. If you're not aware or cannot find any modern examples of this character being depicted in modern media, then you might want to go more with the cultural analysis. So let's start with the cultural analysis. That's the next slide. You just follow this link. So you just have to fill out this graphic organizer here. It's not a whole essay. If you want to do it as an essay, that's fine. But cultural analyses are conducted by looking at the products, things that were made. So these would be like things including, but not limited to, buildings, statues, any type of art, whether it's painted, literature, things that are written, laws. So things that are created either concretely or abstractly that some way, shape, or form relate to that character, or, and this is kind of a major piece, things that are related to that character. So for Asclepius, for example, the god of medicine, you could even not just look at Asclepius himself and the statues and art and stuff made around him, but also he is, the god of medicine. So things that relate to medicine in Roman times, surgical tools, different types of medicine that they would use. Those could be used here as well. Practices, these are things that Romans or Greeks did in relation to the deity or a related topic. So using Asclepius as an example, were there any sort of rituals that people who worshipped Asclepius specifically did? Were there any things that were done in Roman or Greek times in relation to that god or goddess or something related to them? Like I said, with medicine here, you could talk about different practices. Like I said, worshiping, rituals, sacrifices, what type of animals were sacrificed, or also even practices relating to the practice of medicine itself. So what did they do for, like, how did surgery go? Did they do surgery? How did going to the doctor go? How was it, how was it uniquely different from the way it is now? Or if it was similar, how is it similar? And then lastly, you have perspectives. And this is where you kind of look at the products that the Romans made and the practices that they undertook. And you kind of from that extrapolate their view of the world. So like, for example, with the story of Arachne, the girl who was so good at weaving, she challenged Athena to a weaving contest, won, and then made the goddess so angry that she turned her into a spider for the rest of her life. Based off that story and other things related to her, and if you did stuff like weaving and practices related to weaving, from that story, the moral, if it's like a fairy tale moral story, kind of like the story of Arachne, what is the moral of that story? And to my mind, it would be that being arrogant and challenging the gods never ends well. So maybe you should always respect the gods, even if you think you're better. You should always listen to the gods, even if you think you're better. And if you don't, you will be punished. Those would be perspectives. It's how they saw the world, things like that. The worship of Asclepius probably shows that they held doctors and medicine in high regard, but maybe there's something else there too. And you just kind of document those types of thoughts and your findings in these boxes. It does not have to be a full-on essay. This is all you're completing. You can do it in bullet points, or you could do it as a paragraph. That's fine with me. Make sure to fill in your character's name in the middle here. If you want to do the classical reception analysis, like I said, classical reception is the study of the portrayal and representation of stuff from the ancient world, stories from the ancient world in modern times. So I kind of made this in mind with movies and video games and books and things like that. So this first part, you kind of give, if we're talking about anything like that, title, release of info of a modern piece, whether it be a movie or video game, you can give a picture of the cover, and what is the title of the modern portrayal, what's the name of the movie, video game, whatever, and release info. When was it released? Who was the director or author? Just basic info like that. Then over here, you kind of summarize the modern piece, talking about which parts, like where does your character come in? If you've read Percy Jackson, chances are that series shows a lot of different characters, whether you read the books or watch the movies. It's always a good place to start. If you play video games, man, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Hades, God of War, there's tons of games that borrow from Roman mythology. So up here is just kind of a summary and informational part about the modern piece that you're looking at. Down here is where you kind of start your analysis. So down here is kind of where you compare and contrast the similarities and differences between the modern portrayal and the ancient portrayal. Medusa is a great example of this. In modern portrayals, she's often shown as very evil, just like she's just this monster. There's no real backstory. She's just this evil monster who needs to die. Meanwhile, in the actual story, she was once just a regular woman, a follower of Athena, and because she angered the gods, she got turned into that Gorgon. And her story is actually really sad because, and if you really think about it, she did not deserve that at all in any way. So anyway, that's just kind of where you summarize similarities and differences. And then right here, the significance of the modern reinterpretation. Significance meaning like, why is it important? Why did they choose to make the changes they did? Percy Jackson's a great example of this. I mean, there are a lot of similarities. I'm very thankful for this series, even though I've never seen it, because I feel like it's responsible for over 60% of the kids who take this class. In my mind, a lot of the changes they make are made to make it more palatable or interesting for a younger modern audience, and kind of reignite that interest in ancient Greek and Roman mythology. To me, that is why they made the changes they did. But once again, I'm saying that just based off vibes. I've never seen it. But that's the general kind of direction. So just to recap here, if you're doing the classical reception, top row is very basic info. Title, release, movie poster or book cover, video game cover, if you got it. Over here, the summary of the story or summary of the book, summary of the song lyrics, emphasizing parts involving your character. If you'd rather, you can just grab a quote from the book or lyrics if that's the direction you're going. There are a lot. If you're into metal, my God, they love them some mythology. You could probably find some metal lyrics that relate to this. There's also a bunch of others out there. If there's a passage that you just want to quote, you could put this here instead of just doing a summary. And then like I said, down here is where the analysis is. Compare and contrast, and then tell me give me your best guess as to why they made the changes they did and why that was important. And that's basically it. That's the rundown. Once you're done with those three things, then you can submit them in the Dropbox. If you are free to make a pumpkin as well, and please share it if you do. You can get some really sick pumpkins that way. Students at East over here have been making their pumpkins today, and we have some really good ones, and I'll be sharing those pictures with y'all on the discussion board as well. That's all I got. If you have any questions, please reach out. Sorry for the miscommunication and some of the late posting these last couple of weeks. If y'all are feeling overwhelmed, then I feel you. I'm right there with you. But we're going to get through it together. So anyway, walete, my friends, and I will see you soon.